Okay. Am I like – oh, here we go. Football is in the air as fall camp will begin across the SEC this week. All 16 Southeastern Conference programs preparing for kickoff for the 2024 season. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He's Cole Thompson. We're talking fall camp today, the top storylines for each and every single SEC program. As again, kickoff is officially 1 month away, and each of these teams doing what they need to do to prepare for the 2024 season. Guys, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get podcasts. Also, you can find us all across social media platforms as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. We're also brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Guys, download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com. And when you do, use promo code SECU for our first deposit match of up to $100. Again, guys, it's our friends at Prize Picks. Promo code SECU to get your first deposit match today. Like I mentioned, guys, 1 month till kickoff. Football is in the air all across the SEC landscape this week. Every single program going to be taking the field in preparation for the 2024 season. What's the top storyline at each SEC school throughout fall camp over these next couple weeks? That's exactly what we're going to break down, and to help me do it, my good friends Dave Shumate, Cole Thompson. Boys, what's going on?
What's going on, Chris? Cole? Chris, I saw you earlier. Cole, I've not seen you today, but it's nice to see you as always, brother.
We got football back. We're so close. This is like just the perfect blend of what you want. It's like going and understanding that Thanksgiving has come and gone, and for those sickos that love to immediately throw down the atmosphere and then bring in the Christmas decorations, this is us. Like, this is our version of it. We get to now celebrate talking college football, even though games are still a little over 4 weeks away. But we're almost there. We're like,
you, Cole, right, I'm kind of jealous. You've been taking in some football already. Granted, NFL, so it's a little bit different. But, you know, now for us that haven't been paying attention to training camp so much, right? Maybe some of you out there, probably including me, are excited to watch the Hall of Fame game, the NFL, just because we got something. We got college teams, the SEC specifically, finally hitting the practice fields. Guys, like I mentioned, we're 1 month away from kickoff today at the time of recording this. We're going to talk top storyline for each and every single team. I know it's fall camp. You got to read in between the lines. We're going to get a lot of coach speak and player speak. But still, make no mistake, there are things with each of these specific teams. We've been breaking this thing down inside and out, ups and downs. I feel like we kind of know these teams at this point. There are specific things for each of these teams. Dave can tell you, Cole can tell you, hey, anybody in college football can tell you just how important these next couple weeks are. Because in spring, right, guys, you know, we have storylines, but it's not your final roster. Over the next couple weeks, these are the guys you're going to war with. These are it. There's no more transfer portal, no more of that nonsense. We now know who the roster is, who the contributors are going to be. And again, each and every single one of these teams has interesting storylines about. So let's go ahead and dive into it, guys. We're going to start, by the way, guys, just so you keep up. We normally go in alphabetical order from Alabama to Vanderbilt. We are going to flip the script because our friends in Nashville are typically never first in anything. So we'll start with them first to make them feel good, and we'll kind of go backwards from our normal script. Let's start, guys, with the Vanderbilt Commodores. A big season upcoming in Nashville. I hear folks say all the time, Clark Lee needs to show us something. And I'm like, I don't really know what that something is, because it's sort of like he's operating with one hand tied behind his back. But you look offensively, Diego Pavia, the quarterback, that's where my mind goes, guys. I mean, there's things defensively they have to get shored up. I think Clark Lee is taking ownership of that side of the ball even more so. That's his forte, right? They got to be better on defense. But for me, guys, the storyline for Vanderbilt, it revolves around the quarterback position. Just how dynamic can he be? And the only playmaker that, and forgive me, I'm all that familiar with, Cedric Alexander at running back. But they got to find some other weapons around it, because I think Pavia, we saw it against Auburn last year. He can be kind of a spark plug, but you got to find something else around him if you're going to scare anybody this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're going with they got to find some other playmakers on offense, Chris?
I would say over the next couple weeks, I think for Vandy, finding playmakers is priority number one.
All right, good. I like how you started on offense. You're right. We got our favorite Italian quarterback, Diego Pavia, the big Coles guy there. But I'm going to go on the opposite side. I think they've lacked some athleticism on the back end. Like, this team, let's be honest, has a ton of question marks, answers we want to see. We may never get them. But I'm going to go the secondary. Just so many big plays they give up over the last 2 or 3 years. Just explosive plays. Just the game that comes to mind is the game against Ole Miss in 2022. Ole Miss set a program passing record against Vanderbilt. They've moved C.J. Taylor, their best linebacker, to further back to play safety. DeRicky Wright's back. They get something out of Marlon Jones, a grad transfer. Just be, I don't know, serviceable is the right word. Just be competent on the back end. So I just want to see if that back end for Vanderbilt, the secondary, can be improved just somewhat. Not like we're waiting on an answer from Tennessee where it's like that's the last missing piece. It's just be serviceable, be competent.
I'll kind of agree with Dave on this one. It's a little bit different because they did add in some talent. I mean, if you look at the recruiting rankings, they added in a 4-star secondary player in Deontay Carter out of Cibola Steel in Texas. If he can ball out, here's my first thing. How committed is he to the program? That's the main goal, for my opinion. Can you keep these guys around for the long haul? Can you create an identity and a culture to where they want to stick by? Because you just watched as arguably your best receiver for the long haul in London Humphreys decided to immediately break out and then go play for the team that everyone is expecting to win the SEC. Well, almost everybody to win the SEC. You lose Will Shepherd because of, again, NIL speaks money. So can you keep some of these young players by establishing a culture? How quickly are you going to need guys like Joseph McVay at wide receiver, Bryson Coleman at tight end to step up? And also, are you going to have, I think, a very good balanced run game, potentially headlined by St. Thomas's Jonan Cardena, another player, 3-star talent out of the university. Out of my own record of Houston, Texas.
Guys, you're not going to get a more in-depth breakdown of Vandy fall camp than that. I can tell you that right now. I just wanted to pat us on the back really quick. Let's keep it moving, though. Let's go to College Station, guys. The Texas A&M Aggies. Fall camp is always a really big deal, right, guys, when the return of football comes. But when you've got an opponent like Notre Dame waiting in week 1, there's an extra level of intensity, right? You don't open with Old Dominion. You don't open with Furman. You've got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And, oh, by the way, it's week 1 of a brand new head coach and a brand new era in Mike Elko. Guys, for me, I'll go to the defensive side. It's finding who is that leader on defense. And I think it's going to be Torian York. But I know there's questions in the secondary. Nick Scorton, obviously, up front is the guy we're all really excited about. But I'm excited to watch York's game, man. He was electric last year, I thought. I thought sort of emerged as that leader right next to Edrin Cooper. But I think York can take that next step. And defensively, I'm excited for Connor Wegman, his kind of return. Would love to see him be healthy an entire season. I think he could be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the league. But Mike Elko getting his hands all over that defense. I've heard Dave say it and many others. Mike Elko's never had a bad defense. That's probably not going to start now. He's got immense talent. It starts at the linebacker spot.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit there. I agree with you, Chris. That's a good one, too. But I think it's simple. If you told me Connor Wegman, a first-round NFL draft pick next year, I think A&M is in that 9-win range right there. I think it comes down to him. Literally, first of all, can he stay healthy? The best ability is availability. Can he stay healthy? I think he's got weapons. It's not a lot of proven production, but if you watch the tape, you see ability. Jedi Walker, Noah Thomas, Moose Muhammad when he can be on the field. A change of scenery, I think, for those guys at the wide receiver position coach, I think would be good for them. I think it's going to be good for them. If Wegman just takes that next step, we talked about it, take that next step as like a pro. Can he prepare as a pro? Can he be a leader that you need to be at that position in the SEC at Texas A&M? I think if Connor Wegman takes that next step, plays up to his ability. I'm interested to see how Colin Klein utilizes him because Colin Klein's used to having mobile quarterbacks he runs between the tackles. Will Howard, Skylar Thompson in the past at Kansas State. Hell, we all remember Colin Klein was a running quarterback himself who liked to run between the tackles when he was at K-State. So I think Connor Wegman taking that next step, I know it's a low-hanging fruit, easy one, but I think that is key to Texas A&M having a good first year under Mike Elko.
How do you prove this is not a rebuilding year? because that is, I think, a main thing that many people are going to turn to, especially yours truly, who has been burnt in the past by Texas A&M. We've heard this a combination before. We put the wagon before the horse. We put the wagon before the horse. It's kind of funny how the Cowboys and Aggies have similar fan bases, and they both do the same thing. Well, that's kind of what we're doing here. But this is a team that is not trying to rebuild. Anybody who looks at Texas A&M and says, oh, this will be a rebuilding year, you don't get that luxury playing in the SEC. And you don't get that luxury at a program with that much state-of-the-art resources as Texas A&M. So you have to show that this is not a rebuilding year, that you have the personnel that is coming on in via the portal that is going to immediately flourish the second that they arrive. You have the up-and-coming players in the recruiting rankings that maybe weren't as bountiful as a few other recruiting classes, but it's not about the quantity this year. It's about the quality and setting a standard. It's about having the right quarterback. It's about having the right run game. It's about trusting your instincts and showing that the personnel that you bring out there is going to be sustainable every single time that they touch the field. So the entire training camp is getting everyone on the same page to believe that this is not a rebuilding year. That 7-5, even with a brand new coach, even with a brand new offensive coordinator, even with question marks on both sides of the football, a lackluster offensive line to where you've always wondered what could be the upside of them, this is still not going to be acceptable. What is acceptable is 9 wins. What is acceptable is 10 wins. What is acceptable is being in that race all the way down until the end of the month of November to when Texas was welcome on in. And again, at that point, that's the case. I think honestly, when you think about it, they have to be better than what is going to be a rebuild.
Over under 8.5 in Vegas. It is not your typical year one in College Station. Let's go to Austin, Texas, and talk about the Texas Longhorns. Hook 'em. Guys, I'm going to go back again to the defensive side. There's a number of different directions I could go here, from on the field to intangibles of joining the SEC, right? I think for Texas and OU both, the energy surrounding this fall camp will be unlike anything we've ever seen for these schools, obviously, because they've been hearing for months and months and years about the SEC grind and the physicality. And so that's in the back of the mind over the next couple of weeks as they get ready for, of course, non-conference first couple of weeks, but that SEC schedule to kick in. But for Texas, I am going to go on the defensive side. I know the secondary is the talking point, but guys, you know what helps out a great secondary, or helps out a secondary, I should say, is a great pass rush. And you lose Bo Davis, the D-line coach. You lose some of those big bodies on the interior. I know they've got some talent returning, but I want to see what Texas looks like up front, because with the questions in the secondary, you're going to be relying even more on those guys on the defensive line, especially with some of these offenses you're playing in the SEC. So, I think hearing about the defensive line, and I know we're not really going to find out until we get to kickoff, but I think that's the big thing for Texas is, the secondary. It's tough to stop these high-flying offenses anyways, but you have to have that pass rush. You got to be able to slow down the run game. I think that's the priority for Texas during fall camp.
Yeah, I agree. See what Kenny Baker, new defensive line coach, I think he was the quality control assistant defensive line coach coming over from the Dolphins, had been at Western Kentucky. They've done a good job evaluating. Let's see if he can go take over for Bo Davis. Again, they're not going to replace Byron Murphy and Devontae Sweat this year. I mean, again, I don't think anybody could. So it's going to come down to Vernon Broughton, Alfred Collins. You got Cole's guy. You got our big guy from Georgia, big Bill Norton. Can he step up? The other transfer from Arizona, sorry if I mispronounced it, Teola Savea. If he can step up, that's another guy. Just numbers. They don't have to be Byron Murphy or Devontae Sweat. Just can we build some kind of solid depth across the board? So I'm not going to go much longer, Chris, because you nailed it. But I think interior defensive line as well.
How dare you not give respect to my sweet prince, Bill Norton, the greatest transfer to walk onto the 40 acres since Adonai Mitchell last year. But I'll give you with two real fast. Number one, who is going to be that number one wide receiver? Because somebody's got to step up in that room. Is it going to be Jonte Cook? Is it going to be Isaiah Bond? Is it going to be potentially Matthew Golden, who, again, we're not talking enough about Matthew Golden. He belongs in that conversation of a really talented player. Is it Silas Bolden coming on it? Is it Amari Niblack at tight end? Who's going to be that number one guy? But one of the more underappreciated positions that is not getting talked about enough is the second linebacker spot. I want to see who breaks out opposite of Anthony Hill. And can these two actually correlate? Because one of the biggest blessings that you had in Texas for the last few years was a veteran alongside a newcomer and an up-and-coming rising star. It was DeMarvion Overshown and Jalen Ford. Then it was Anthony Hill alongside with Jalen Ford, who really took over that next step. So Is Hill going to be that guy? Is it going to be David Benda? Is it going to be one of these younger up-and-comers? Who comes on in, and will they be able to combat each other and play extremely well? Maybe it is Mo Blackwell. Who knows what it is? But whoever we talk about, I think you need to have a good cohesive balance between these two, because one of the more underappreciated spots last year of that run defense was the ability of seeing Jalen Ford and Anthony Hill play against each other well.
I want to show some love, by the way. Our guy Longhorn Football Edits commented Mo Blackwell. Y'all engage. We'll get you involved in the show. And by the way, how dare neither one of you bring up the Arch Manning storyline that will be prevalent this fall. The debate.
Is he here?
Nobody wants to be that guy. Nobody wants to be that guy. I respect it. Hey, let's go to Knoxville, Tennessee. Rocky Top. The expectations are sky high for Josh Heupel and the Volunteers. Guys, I'm going to spare you the dramatics. Nico. That's where I'm going. That's the low-hanging fruit. That's where I want to go. It's all about Nico, man, because, listen, I love Tennessee's team this year. I think they've got weapons abound all over the place. I agree with what Dave says all the time. Cooper Mays got to stay healthy on the offensive line. They were a different group when he went out. Assuming that's the case, they're going to be fine there. Defensively, I love the front seven. Yes, secondary is a question. Can that be – just don't be bad, right? It doesn't have to be great. Just don't be bad and cost you games.
Yeah,
if Tennessee's going to get to a playoff, it's going to come down to Nico. I want to hear about his progression. I want to hear about what the offense is looking like. Again, I know we're not going to get a ton, but to me, this fall camp, it's all about the Nico hype.
Yeah, Tennessee was that team I felt, if you're going to take anything away from an SEC Media Day, coaching cliche, stuff like if you maybe put my feet to the fire, I felt better about Tennessee. I think they're closer to the 10. I've had them 9-3 going in, 10-2, but I think the real storyline is Willie Martinez, it's a contract extension. Is he going to earn that pay? I know a bunch of Tennessee fans that were pissed off about that contract extension, but I think it's kind of the last missing piece. They had a bunch of guys transfer out, guys like Danico Slaughter now at Arkansas, but Jermod McCoy is a kid they like from Oregon State. Jacoby Thomas, a kid from Middle Tennessee State. Jalen McMurray, Temple. They got Ricky Gibson back, who could be in that little nickel spot. And you got Boo Carter, a true freshman that could come in and play at safety as well. It seems like talking to them, like some other personnel guys, and hearing Heupel talk about them, how they're a much improved tackling team in the spring. And I love to hear that because tackling's so poor in college football. Now, a lot of it is because the teams don't practice a lot. It's a spatial game, and one-on-one, anything can happen. But if that secondary can, like you said, Chris, can just be adequate, I think Tennessee has a real shot to see potentially in Atlanta, but I think definitely a playoff spot if you told me the Tennessee secondary is a solid group across the board.
Every good quarterback needs a security blanket. And that is not at wide receiver. It is at offensive line. How quickly can this offensive line mesh, especially with all the returning production? You bring over Zalance Hurd from LSU. You talk to people in Baton Rouge. There was not a sign of optimism that they lost one of the former five-star phenoms that decided to play behind Will Campbell. They wanted him to play. There was just nowhere for him. It's like when Marion Joseph went to the inn. There was no room for him there. There was no room for him in Baton Rouge. So now he's in Knoxville. Now he's on the blind side of the offensive line. Now you're moving now you're moving Spraggins on over. You're making some moves. You have a good run game. It's unproven, but it's a good run game headlined by Dylan Sampson. You bring in a ton of new weapons from Chris Brazzell to Mike Matthews, Holden Stays at tight end. You feel confident that Nico's going to be able to build that chemistry. You bring back Deontay Thornton, a really good name that just had a couple of bad breaks last year. You still have Squirrel White. You still have Brew McCoy. But none of it matters unless if you have a good offensive line to be able to set the tone. And you got two games very early on in the season against Oklahoma and NC State that is really going to be a litmus test for the future of what we know about this Tennessee squad. You look at where Tennessee is as a program right now. They feel like that they're on the precipice of finally being back to national relevancy with the way they utilize NIL, with the way that they're able to bring in certain recruits, and also Heupel's offense is very much fixated on certain players that he's going to self-scout years in advance. I mean, we're talking like their freshman year, 8th grade. He already has a good understanding who fits and who doesn't. So if you're able to get those kids to commit to you right now and already have that type of enigma of what you're looking for in a player, that's what you see from players, from coaches like Kirby Smart, with coaches like Nick Saban, with coaches like I'll even go above the grain and say Dan Lanning and Ryan Day. They understand not only do we have a program that we are wanted at, but we have a program that wants certain players. If you can have an offensive line that gets Nico up to page to where they are talking about making it to Atlanta, I mean, he's going to be in the Heisman conversation. You're going to have him certainly as a front runner to win a national championship. And that's going to do wonders, I think, for the future of Knoxville when it comes to recruiting. The balls are on the come up. And I really think that this offensive line, giving that protection for Nico, is going to do a lot of heavy lifting.
And guys, before we get off Tennessee, we got 1 month till SEC football. So let's go around really quickly. Nico Iamaleava. You've got a month to get the last name right. All right, Dave, I want to hear you say it now.
Nico Iamaleava. I heard JD Pickell.
You got about 3 weeks.
I heard our guy JD Pickell butcher it today, and Tennessee fans were killing him.
All right, Cole, I know you know how to say it.
Nico Iamaleava.
Oh, come on.
Nico Iamaleava.
Okay.
I've been the first one to know it before anybody.
Don't worry. I know. I've been practicing. Don't worry. We've got about 3 more weeks, but when we start previewing the games, everybody make sure you get it right. Then that goes to everybody, by the way. I'm not just talking to Dave and Cole. I'm talking to all you out there listening. Make sure you get Nico's last name right because they will let you hear about it. All right, let's go to Columbia, South Carolina. The Gamecocks, huge year upcoming for Shane Beamer and company. Guys, top storyline. I think this one is really easy, actually. And there's a number, certainly, but the wide receiver position. Who is wide receiver 1? I mean, who is that guy? That was the top storyline in the spring. That is the top storyline in the fall. Nicholas Harbor's a guy we're all very well aware of. If he's anything like he is on the EA Sports college football video game, he's probably going to have 2,000 yards receiving. But this is real life, and we haven't seen him do it in real life yet. Did not participate in spring. He's got the size. He's got the speed. The kid is a track star. But are we hearing about him emerging as that top guy? Who's the number 1 option for Lenore Sellers? It doesn't even have to be Nick Harbor, although it seems like he's the top candidate, if you will. But you got a young quarterback in Lenore Sellers. You know you're going to lean on the run game. But, guys, you know as well as I do, you're going to have to throw the football. I mean, if you go into Kentucky one-dimensional, you go up against LSU even one-dimensional, Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma, the list goes on and on with that schedule. If you're one-dimensional, you don't have a chance. Somebody's got to step up on the outside and help out Lenore Sellers.
Yeah, you mentioned throwing the ball. I think Spencer Rattler had 6 games or more. I think last year they had
35 passing attempts or more at half the time. They can't do that and have success.
No. So defense, I like the defense. I like the returners in the same. I don't know how well they're going to cover. Top to bottom, they're solid. Not a lot of compared to the other teams in the league. Not a lot of speed on that back end. But I'm going to stay here. It's going to be random. It's probably my most random one. Robbie Ashford. How is he used with him? It'd be dumb not to use him.
Dave starting a quarterback controversy. Stir it up.
I'm not going to say he's not starting over doing that. I think I'm talking to them. Dow Loggins is going to use him a lot in the running game in between the tackles. So the offensive line has to stay healthy. But also, if you're going to run him as much as I'm hearing they're running him, I don't know if you can hold up a whole season. So why not throw a little lightning in there? You got the thunder with Lenore Sellers. You got the lightning with Robbie Ashford. You'd be dumb not to mix it up. The guy's proven he can run if you develop within a schema. He had a great Iron Bowl, 2 years ago in Tuscaloosa, rushed for a couple over 100 yards. It was something pretty well. I mean, they were down big, but he was taking off. But again, you'd be dumb not to utilize Robbie Ashford's legs. I mean, I think you've got to use him somewhere if you're going to ride that Lenore Sellers horse for the whole season. I don't know if he can make it through a 12-game season as much as I'm hearing they're trying to run him. So I think you got to factor in Robbie Ashford there. How do they use him in fall camp? I'm sure they already have some plans, but I'll be interested to see that.
Who is Luke Doty? Who is Luke Doty? Honestly, I want to know. Who is he? Is he a myth? Was he just a figment of our imagination at SEC Media Days? Is he a linebacker? Is he a quarterback? Is he a tight end? Is he going to play wide receiver? Because I don't know if Shane Beaver knows where he's going to play right now. They have him listed as an athlete, and athletes are awesome, but just because you play in the rec league on Tuesday nights does not mean that you're going to be swinging it yard in the MLB. So where does Luke Doty best fit? I think that's a low-hanging fruit. I'm also very excited to see what this defense looks like. 9 returning starters. They're going to have to carry a lot of the load early on if they want to be able to establish something in Columbia. I'm a lot higher on South Carolina than most. I am drinking the Kool-Aid that Shane Beamer is pouring out right now. I am a believer that he gets to
make sure he doesn't kick that cooler down.
He gets to come in next year to Georgia with the double birds like Neil Brown 2.0 if he ends up having a stellar offense. But the only way that you're going to have a stellar offense is by giving them time to build that relationship. How quickly does this defense only continue to build off of last season? Because you got to remember, down the stretch, They really started to hone into their craft when they switched formations. So can they continue to build off that with 9 returning starters?
If anybody wants to enjoy that Lenora Sellers Kool-Aid, Cole Thompson's a great man to sit down and take that in as well.
Yeah, let Mike Shula an X factor there.
Mike Shula. Wow, that was a name.
Fun.
That was a subtle little name drop at Media Days that certainly caught the attention of those in the room. Guys, let's go to Oxford, Mississippi. Speaking of high expectations, the Ole Miss Rebels have got their sights set on the college football playoff. By the way, our friend Jerry Moore is back in the chat. Hottie Toddy from Pascagoula, Mississippi. What's going on, Jerry Moore? Appreciate you. Was in the live show earlier today here on this Monday. Guys, the Ole Miss Rebels. What is the top storyline for Ole Miss? It's a great question. What do you get somebody that has everything? That's how it feels. I don't know what the weakness is for Ole Miss. Guys, my biggest storyline is, I know the guys will be fired up because football is back. But how does Lane Kiffin keep this group excited? I mean, they don't play anybody for the first month. They have a preseason. Furman, Middle Tennessee State, at Wake Forest, if you want to give them their crown.
I'm so excited for that one.
And Georgia Southern, which was
once a proud program. Is that on the WB after Dawson's Creek?
CW.
After Dawson's Creek.
Get it correct, Dave. Anyways, how does Lane Kiffin keep these guys motivated and focused on the task at hand and just high-level intensity? You know what I mean? It may not sound, you may think to yourself, well, maybe that won't – we're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds that can get distracted by anything. So, and this is a very big fall camp for Ole Miss because getting all these pieces to come together, to mesh, to gel, to get down that chemistry, is he going to be able to keep those guys focused and locked in, and not just locked in through fall camp, but through those first 4 weeks as well? Because it's a preseason for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I'm going to go with depth on defense. I think it'd be easy to say, hey, can he keep all these guys on the same page to be on the same team? That's not going to be an issue during fall camp. It'll rise during the season at some point with some adversity hits. But I think it's going to be depth defensively. I mean, guys like, can Corey Coleman take that next step? Can they find a role for him? Can Pete go and find a role for him? Can TJ Bull Dudley, who I think just literally changed his name to another last name, by the way. But TJ Bull Dudley, he's a guy. They're going to line him up inside. They're going to line him off the ball. Lawrence Key, transfer from Oklahoma, I do believe. Oklahoma. Yam Banks, from South Alabama. Can some of these, Brandon Turnage, who's an Oxford native coming back over, can some of these guys turn into solid depth players? Chris Hardy, an undersized pass rusher. Can he? Xavier Harris, who's been on the team. Achilles Stone. Those guys, I want to see those guys get better. We probably won't see it from a standpoint of just a fall camp. I mean, Lane Kiffin said it. He's like, our team from top to bottom looks great getting off the bus, and I haven't been able to say that in my first 4 years here before. So I think the depth on defense is something I want to see. I see it on offense. There's no denying that. But let's see that depth on defense.
Chris, you said at the very beginning of this whole thing, what do you call out a team that has almost everything that they want? Yeah, that's the storyline. Where's the flaw? Where is it? Where the hell is it? Because of honestly, this is the last dance. There's not going to be a team that walks through Oxford that is built with this same type of poison enigma the way that they were the last few years. Because if it's not just the names they brought in via the portal, it's the names that said, I want to come back for another round. It's the names that said, I got a taste of what was 11 wins. That's not good enough. I want 12. I want 13. I want to win a playoff game. I want Oxford. I want Vaught to be rocking in early December when we have to host a playoff game. Now, you know what? Strike that. I want to actually not have to play that game, and I want to have the first round bye because of we're that good of a team. I've already made this clear, and I don't know for any of you watching, if you've seen the video, the Heisman Trophy winner, in my opinion, resides in Oxford, Mississippi this year. His name is Jackson Dart. Number 2 is the number 1 quarterback in the SEC for me in 2024, and I'm excited to see what he brings to the table. But where is the flaw? Because every team has one, and it could be team chemistry. It could be one of the newcomers having an attitude problem that doesn't mesh well with the roster that came in last year. It could be overhypeness and they let it get to their heads a little bit too much. Where is the flaw? It doesn't always have to be an external factor. It can sometimes be an internal move or an internal flame that doesn't always work. So to me, that is the storyline. What is the flaw? And how do you make sure that it doesn't come up anywhere in the regular season, especially not in the games against LSU and Georgia? We already know that that's going to be something to watch. It's against the games like Wake Forest. It's against the games like Furman. How do you have those type of performances where you put pedal to the metal and say, we're not going to fall victim to playing on a boring schedule or a preseason matchup?
Hell, me and Chris talked about it. Ole Miss is going to be that team that's going to be criticized early hard in the season, week to week, until they play LSU, I think, or at least till the South Carolina game.
They should. I'm sorry.
Won't be able to win by enough. And bonus storyline, I think the bonus storyline in Oxford might be can Lane Kiffin wrap his team in bubble wrap till he gets to kickoff and just carry that?
There's always some team that has some critical injury.
Yeah, well, that could be the storyline for everybody, but we don't want to go that direction. By the way, before we get off, Mike Vandegrift says hotty toddy. Mike, appreciate you tuning in. Guys, let's jump over to Norman, Oklahoma. The Oklahoma Sooners. Boomer, year 1 of life in the SEC begins. I'll let somebody else take the low-hanging fruit of what the top storyline is, which is the offensive line. Oklahoma fans have heard about offensive line play probably more this offseason. They've heard about it in the past 20, 50, I don't know how many years of their history combined. The storyline I'm most excited for, guys, is to hear about that Jackson Arnold, Deion Burks connection, man. I'm excited for that one. I think that one could be sneaky, the most deadly connection in the SEC, at least one of the best. I know you just talked about Jackson Dart, and he's going to have Trey Harris and Juice Wells, and there's some other big-time ones, right? But if Jackson Arnold gets that protection, so which may make offensive line and, pass blocking the bigger storyline, but I'm going to go a different direction. The Jackson Arnold, Deion Burks, we saw him in the spring game, and I know it's a spring game, but I think we're going to get a lot more than that, guys. Do not be surprised if you look up late in the season and you see old Deion Burks leading the SEC in receiving. I think he could be that good.
Yeah, I'm going to go the low-hanging fruit here, man. I'm going to go.
Somebody has to. I wanted to give you the opportunity, though.
No, I mean, I think the only guy that's really locked down a spot, I would say, is Fabechi Nwawu, the kid at North Texas transfer out of the spring.
Who?
I'm sure somebody has stepped up. I'm sure somebody has stepped up some over in these spring meetings or these summer meeting segments, the meeting times they have now. A lot of these installs. I'm sure somebody has stepped up. But I mean, guy, you're replacing 4 to 6 contributors, depending what Oklahoma fan will tell you. Breaking in a new quarterback with Jackson Arnold. It starts up front, though, because I think they have some of the lesser question marks on defense. I think their defense from top to bottom, everybody would agree, is a pretty solid unit. I think
could be elite.
Everybody kind of has some kind of question mark on defense. I think kind of except them. They have some holes here and there, but for the most part, you feel good about all 3 levels. I think it comes down to the offensive line. I really do. Can they be serviceable? Bill Bedenbow does a good job. One of the better offensive line coaches in the country. He's going to earn his paycheck this year. He's going to earn his paycheck. You're going to find out about Oklahoma early. After their first 2 conference games, we're going to know what the Sooners are going to be made out of. They go at Auburn, or they open up with Tennessee, then go at Auburn. You're going to know. They at least need to go 1-1 with that. Oklahoma's that team. They're on a lot of true SEC championship contender team schedules. The LSUs, the Tennessees, the Alabamas, the Texases, teams like that. So they're going to make or break some team schedule depending, are they closer to a 6-7 win team, or are they closer to that 9 and 10 win range? It could make some team schedules a lot more difficult. So Oklahoma's that wild card in the league to me, but I think the big question mark starts up front on the offensive line.
And now for Oklahoma homer, Cole Thompson. Cole, take it away.
How elite. How elite. How elite can that defensive front be? Because holy crap, I have gotten so much flack from SEC folks, from everybody giving praise to the Sooner defense. They are not Big 12 good. They are not SEC good. They are blank good. They are effing blank good. And how good can they be from the get-go? Because I can tell you what, if you pressure Nico Iamaleava into making mistakes inside of Gaylord, that's going to play a major factor for this offense to be able to step up the pace. If you're able to start getting the run game going and forcing the offense, having to throw deep downfield for opposing teams, you got a damn good safety who last year picked off 6 balls in Billy Bowman, and you got another one that nobody's talking about in Peyton Bowen that I think is going to be a superstar by the end of this season. And I think his reps are going to expand more because you don't have Key Lawrence there anymore. I think the other thing that's really important is you added in arguably one of the best defensive linemen that Brent Venables self-scouted the last 2 years in Dominic Williams. And don't think for one second that because of, he chose Oklahoma, he was not well suited. Miami wanted him. LSU wanted him. There was rumors that Georgia wanted him. Everybody wanted him. So if you're able to get this defense to play up to par And I mean well above par. And they're able to close the gap, and they're able to have a super talented defensive front seven that pressures quarterbacks into making mistakes. They got a secondary that can at times give up some explosive plays, but they'll make up for it for a turnover. They have a roster that I think drastically is flying under the radar. Yeah, Bill Beatonbow's got to be able to work with offensive linemen. He's had other problems in the past. Promise you, he'll figure it out pretty freaking quick. But if that defense steps up, you're in a really good spot if you are Oklahoma. And by the way, Oklahoma also is going to be able to have that schedule to where when we go to this conversation, who belongs in the playoffs? How many teams from the SEC? How many teams do we get from the – at the end of the day, it's not really going to matter because if they will have the schedule that says you are not leaving Oklahoma out with that many wins against that many ranked teams.
One of the most difficult conference slates that you will see this year, by the way.
It's tougher than Florida's.
Yeah, it's tough. Sooner Cowboys. Boomer Sooner from the AUG. What's up? Representing 706, he says, from Biloxi, Mississippi. So kind of all over the Southeast. Appreciate you, Sooner Cowboys, tuning in, interacting with the show. All right, let's keep it moving, guys. We'll go to Como, Columbia, Missouri. Boy, we haven't seen expectations like these in Como in a long, maybe since like Chase Daniel was there or something like that. It's been a very, very long time. And, you know, when it comes to storylines, you know, I'll go with the question I actually got to ask Eli Drinkwitz in the big room at SEC Media Days. That's about the run game. Now, he gave me a kind of an interesting answer when he talked about we're trying to replace him as people. Okay, Eli, but what about the running game? I want to know, is it going to be an RB1? Is it running back by committee? Marcus Carroll, Nate Noel. Cole's done a great piece on them. I'm sure Dave's talked about them before too. Both these guys, transfer portal pieces. I mean, I think they can replace the production, but I really want to know, is it going to be more of that running back by committee, or do we see one of those two guys, or does somebody else emerge? I'm sure they're great people too, Coach Drinkwitz, but I want to know about the on-field production.
Yeah, I'm going to just go to the overall defense. I mean, they lost their best players at all three levels. Darius Robinson, Tyrone Hopper. They lost to Ennis Rakestraw. They lost to Chris Abrams-Drain. And then you lost three coaches on that side of the ball. Not a lot of teams replace that, not especially in Missouri right now. They don't replace that. Corey Batoon, inexperienced. Been a group of five DC. Kane Womack really called that. So it'll be interesting. I think Missouri's going to be good on offense. You're right, Chris. I think the run game is not a question mark. It's just we're waiting to see TBD. But I think it'll come. I think the defense. I think the schedule. If the schedule was a little bit, if they had Oklahoma's schedule, I'd be a little bit more down on Missouri. I think they'd be closer to 7-5, 8-14. The schedule, though, I just don't. I mean, it's built for 9 wins. Anything less than 9 wins would be a disappointing year for Eli Drinkwitz. But it's kind of like the band Europe. You played the final countdown. We talked about it, Chris, on the earlier show on Texas Sports Unlimited. That's your one-hit wonder. That was Eli Drinkwitz's first winning season in 4 years since he's been at Missouri. Let's see if you can do it again. And it starts on the other side of the football.
Who are you really, Eli Drinkwitz? That is the question.
Thank you, boys, because if you literally just got me set up, bulletin board material. Because of all I've heard from people from the outside is that Oklahoma would be having, Missouri would have such a lackluster schedule. They should cakewalk into the college football playoff. Missouri last season, if you put that roster with this squad, maybe they'd actually go undefeated. Maybe not. Are we sure this defense is going to be that great? Are we sure that this offense isn't going to take a step back? Are we sure that we can replace the production lost by Cody Jack? Stop it. Carry on that bulletin board material. Put everything up there. And you have a petty coach. You have seriously the definition of petty town in Eli Drinkwitz that stands on business, as he likes to tell Josh Heupel from time to time. Use that to your advantage. And also make sure that when you are getting ready to play those big time matchups, the ones against Missouri, the ones against Oklahoma, the ones against Alabama, the ones against Texas A&M, use those matchups for practice material. Unload the kitchen sink. Leave a few plays deep back there, but let those teams know what Vanderbilt wanted to do that one time when you heard that one guy say, Alabama, you're next. Yeah, just do that every single time and have an offense and a defense who does not care about the outside noise. Stick to the script and stick to the standard internally, because if I can tell you what, there is a lot to like about this Missouri squad, regardless of if you think that they are a good roster or if they're a team that is going to take a step back simply because of you feel like that they lost some pieces.
Guys, let's go to Starkville, Mississippi, a place that I have made no friends within the last couple of hours. We had a comment here earlier in the show. Ladarius Barksdale said your Mississippi State prediction is lazy at best. Well, Ladarius,
You ain't gonna like mine.
I hate to tell you, you're not going to find much comfort in these other two gentlemen I'm sitting with here. But besides the point here, top storyline for Mississippi State going into fall camp. I'm going to take what Dave was just talking about with Mizzou and apply it to Mississippi State. The entire defense, because how the hell are we going to stop anybody? And I want to know, is Coleman Hutzler up to the challenge? First time DC in the SEC. It's unheard of. It doesn't happen. There's a reason it doesn't. I think Blake Shapen, Kelly Akari on the offensive side, it could be exciting. I may be even a little bit higher on Jeff Lebby at State than you two guys are. And I'll let y'all take the floor with that. But I think he could be the right guy there in Starkville. But can we stop anybody in year one? That's the question I have. Can we stop anyone? Where do you find the answers defensively? It starts over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's you step up on defense. I mean, I think their own offense put up about 70 points on them in their spring game. First time DC, Coleman Hutzler.
Coleman Hutzler, a journeyman in the SEC. That dude has been
I think the
everywhere.
only reason he was hired is because him and Levy have the same agent. They had a connection at Ole Miss. So I don't really know what the credentials were for that. I hope Mississippi State's SID it and listen to this because we got it Chris Jans tomorrow to make it at the last minute. But you lose your two best players too at the second level, Nathaniel Watson and Jet Johnson. It kind of comes down to the only guy on the roster you feel like it's got a little bit of proven ability is the defensive line of DeMonte Russell. But outside of that, I'm just not high on the Mississippi State defense this year. I think it's going to have to just be an exciting product that you should hope to go win 5 games. I mean, me and Chris talked about it earlier. The must-win game is Arizona State. You got to win that game, and then kind of the rest, you hope you just steal a conference game. And you never want to say a losing record's a solid season or something you'd accept. I just think this year, 5-7, you win your 4 non-cons, get a conference win. You're an exciting product with Blake Shapen in the offense, which I think is possible for sure. I would lean towards yes. Yeah, I just don't think the defense with first-time DC Coleman Hutzler is going to be – there's not enough playmakers on that side of the ball for a first-time DC to get his feet wet in the Southeastern Conference.
Do you have offense? And also, who – I mean, everybody knows this about Jeff Levy's offense. It's so up-tempo fast. There is little time to be able to react. The problem is that when you were at Oklahoma, when you were at Ole Miss, when you were at UCF, you also had the weaponry to be able to do that. So do you have that right now in Starkville? Do you have the pieces that are going to be able to transcend your passing attack downfield to be able to use that vertical approach? Like, they're not an air raid. I'm going to make this clear, Mississippi State fans, because if I do care about you, even though it seems like I don't, because if I technically really don't, but not the point. You're not an air raid offense. It's like if Lane Kiffin and Josh Heupel and Art Briles all walked into a bar, got in a scuffle, and they threw together a playbook with all their pages, and that's Jeff Levy's offense. So it's like that's the way you can describe it, where it's a lot of up-tempo. They like to run it, but do you have the personnel to do so? And if you do, well, even if you don't end up getting more than 4 wins this year, which I don't think you will, sorry, spoiler alert, get over it, you will be able to talk mad smack to me. You will be able to say basically anything. And you know what? Mississippi State's at its best, but it's petty. Like, I love petty Mississippi State. When they come with receipts, when they pull up tweets from 5 years ago of somebody talking mad smack and saying things about what the direction of the program is, and it's like, you were wrong. I mean, I wasn't, but yeah, sure. I mean, if you want to go ahead and go that deep, yeah, why not? I would love to see petty Mississippi State out. I would love to hear the cowbells be ringing in my ears just like they do whenever I go visit that stadium, but it's all just negativity towards me because I was wrong. I don't think I am, but maybe I am. Do you have the offensive pieces?
No one's hated more in Starkville than our guy Cole.
I have got
they put beans in their chili there, baby.
I have got to be top 5. And you know what? If you put beans in your chili, how dare you, Stark Vegas? How dare you? You don't even want me to come visit you, do you? You just want me to stay away. I'm not going to. I'm going to come visit. I'm going to be the opposite of Brandon Walker. I'm going to be the anti-Brandon Walker, which is a good thing.
Let it be on record for all the Mississippi State folks tuned in that I'm sure there are many.
That's disgusting.
That I'm sure there are many. Lance Kendall said that's disgusting. Yeah. That I'm sure there are many. Dave Shumate, Cole Thompson, not Jeff Lebby guys. Me, big Jeff Lebby guy. So just make sure when you're tagging us that you remember that. I'm kidding. Kind of. Anyways, let's go to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You talk about feisty and petty. That's the definition of LSU fans, I feel like. Big year 3 for Brian Kelly upcoming, guys. Again, there's a number of directions you can go here when you're talking about the top storyline of a fall camp. Again, I'll leave the low-hanging fruit to somebody else because I'm going to go offensive side. We know how historically bad the defense was last year. Blake Baker comes in, new DC. I'm going to go offensively, though. You're not going to be better without the Heisman Trophy winner. Can you be almost as good, though? That's my question. Garrett Nussmeier, this is uncharted territory for Garrett Nussmeier. Fall camp, you're QB1. You're not going to be the hero off the bench. You're the guy. This is your football team. Also, I think we're all high on the playmakers they have offensively. I know they lost Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Got to replace a pair of first-round receivers, but got a couple dudes at the wide receiver spot, Kyron Lacey, C.J. Daniels, the Liberty transfer. But Garrett Nussmeier, can he show that level of consistency that is necessary to get LSU to the college football playoff? Because we talked about this earlier today. LSU is one of those programs, they feel like it's their birthright to be in the playoff. It's just not going to be good enough not to be in the college football playoff. More often than not, starts at the quarterback position offensively. You don't got to be Jaden Daniels. That's the beautiful thing. They're going to be more balanced offensively. But I want to hear about Garrett Nussmeier taking that next step, making progress. Again, another thing we're not going to know till we get to the season, but this is a big, big fall camp for Garrett Nussmeier, guys.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit. I feel like I've been pretty bullish since the end of last year on the interior defensive line. You got Jacobian Guillory, Jalen Lieu, who've been in the program now, I think 4 or 5 years. We know at LSU that's not usually, you aren't hanging around that long unless you're making an impact. These guys are just the next guys up. Jordan Jefferson was their third, probably. He was a little more productive than Mason Smith. Didn't have the upside of Mason Smith, but I thought he had a good year. He would be by far. It'd be him and then a gap for what they have this year. Right? And it comes down to who was the last SEC champion, national champion, which you mentioned, Chris. That's LSU's expectations. That won without at least solid to good interior defensive line. I can't think of one probably in my lifetime that had a bad interior defensive front and won the SEC. And that's what LSU has this year. Unless transfer from Wisconsin, Gio Pius can come in and do something. Sean Washington, who didn't hear great things about it, Georgia, was an East Mississippi Community College transfer. They got Don McKinley, a true freshman. But if you're relying on true freshmen to come in and play on the interior in the SEC, it's never good. I just want to see who these guys are. I just want to see who is stepping up, if anybody, on the interior. Again, I think Blake Baker, Bo Davis, safeties coach they brought in from Missouri, phenomenal hires. They're going to get it right. I just think, again, Brian Kelly said, judge me year 3. I think his almost roster malpractice on the defensive line in his first 3 recruiting cycles because he wasn't hands-on is going to come back to haunt him this year in a year. They're, like you said, Chris, they're going to be good enough on offense, I think, to compete for the league. I just think that interior defense, the defensive line in general, was just it was just mishandled for these past 3 years. I think it's going to come back to haunt them this year, but they'll be fine down the road because they made a good DC hire.
You still have not gone with the lowest of all low-hanging fruit, so I will take this one. Harold Perkins, where you at? Where are you at? And I mean, honestly, where are you at? Are you going to be inside linebacker the way that Blake Baker wants to utilize you? Because that's where you're going to have success in the NFL. Are you going to have to play on the edge? Because if you can't understand the nuances of playing inside linebacker, and if so, how do you replace the production at the position, which is almost essential for this team to be successful against the run? Are you going to be playing a lot more of a defensive end position? Are they going to bulk you up? Are you going to have literally be told to do 2 or 3 moves and that be it? Are you going to be the weak side backer? Are you going to be playing the mic? Are you going to be a spy? Like, how are they going to utilize you? Because again, all this comes down to is, can you have leaders in the room? I have been very bullish on the hires to where I feel like that the names that they brought in on the defensive side might get the best version of the quantity of players that they have, to where the quality still will matter, but it won't be a death sentence for this team, especially when you know what this offense can be. But it all comes down to me, if everyone is in the right place, is everyone in the right location? Harold Perkins, where are you at? Seriously, where are you at this year?
If you're an LSU, real quick, to Cole's way, if you're an LSU fan, you got to be jacked with Blake Baker coming in to coach Harold Perkins for what he did to Damone Clark, who's now with the Cowboys. That 21 year, he was the inside backers coach with Ed Orgeron, got the most out of that kid. So, I would be fired up. I think you can get the most hit Harold Perkins ceiling like they haven't in the last 2 years.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing Blake Baker's going to do, it's he's going to make sure he puts.
Yeah, I'm not worried. They're getting most of that defense. I just think there's a lot.
To your point, interior defensive line, the outlook is bleak.
Give me a championship team that's ever had a bad interior defensive line.
Indeed.
LSU,
Guys, let's go to guys, let's go to let's LSU 24. Let's go to Lexington, Kentucky. Talk the Kentucky Wildcats. This feels like kind of one of those kind of sleeper teams coming in. Over under 6.5 in Vegas. You look at the schedule. It's kind of conducive to one of those typical Mark Stoops breakout years, win 9 games or so. Guys, my top storyline for Kentucky, it's the physicality up front. It's make the big blue wall great again. That's what it comes down to. It's so odd. I'm watching Kentucky football last year, and they're down inside the 10-yard line, 1st and goal, and they're running, almost like a trick play, this different passing stuff, and I'm like, what happened? What happened to the game I love? Like what happened to Kentucky football lining up and just being down to punch you in the face? They've got to get back that under Bush Hander, the new offensive coordinator. I know you got Brock Vanderbilt in there at quarterback from Georgia. You've got a pair of great wide receivers, I think, still in Dane Key and Berion Brown. You added I believe it's the Ohio State transfer at the running back spot. But none of that matters if you don't get the blocking up front and get down and dirty in the trenches. That's what made Kentucky so good, that identity under Mark Stoops. Are they able to get back to that and bring the physicality through fall camp, set the tone in fall camp? There's some fall camps out there, to Dave's point, they're not going to tackle. They're not going to be as physical. I would be shocked if that were the case in Lexington over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think the Big Blue Wall is going to get back. I don't know if I'd say a normal prime Mark Stoops territory, but I think they're going to be good enough. I think they brought in, I think Gerald Mincy is going to be a big addition there. But I'm going to go with Brock Vanderbilt, quarterback, transfer from Georgia. We all know. I think we're all high on Kentucky. You mentioned Bush Hampton. I think this is going to be the first time Kentucky fans have seen a quarterback that's going to be utilized from a schematic standpoint in the run game. Again, Will Levis, first pick in the 2nd round for the Titans 2 years ago. So they've had ability, but he wasn't protected. He didn't get to really show his best. Obviously he got drafted high, but last year Devin Leary left a little meat on the bone. Again, offensive line, to your point, Chris. But I think Brock Vandergriff is going to be the guy that we're all going to be saying at the end of the year when they win 8-9 games. Like I think they do. Y'all sound high on Kentucky too. I think we're all going to be sitting there kind of be like, and Kentucky fans too are going to be like, we finally got a quarterback that can go help us win some games. We'll be good in the red zone. We got a running back we can trust, and we also have another weapon in the run game that we hadn't been able to use the last 2 years. So I'm going to go Brock Vandergriff.
Quarterback run game going to be a big deal, by the way. Just piggyback.
Chris, you were talking about the big blue wall, meaning the offensive line, right?
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Because I'm going to talk about the big blue wall that is the defensive line.
The defensive front should be nasty. That's why I was
Because holy crap, how the hell are you running on this squad? Honestly, Deion Walker may be the best defensive lineman in all of college football. He certainly, for my money, is the best defensive lineman in the SEC going into 2024. They added in Jamon Dumas-Johnson from Georgia. Let me make this abundantly clear to people out there that like to think that they know college football. Just because somebody left does not mean that they're not good. Jamon Dumas-Johnson was an all-SEC preseason first-team linebacker, gets hurt. There's no more room for him, so he's got to go elsewhere. What else does he do? He joins forces with Brock Vandergriff, takes over that QB green dot with the helmet on the defensive side of the football. Again, their schedule's manageable. If they're able to set the tone against South Carolina in week 2, if they get great play from Brock Vandergriff, also Jamori Macklin, the wide receiver from UNT that is flying under the radar. He flies the end zone for 6 easy points. If you get that, and that defense really is a tone setter the way that we know in years past underneath Mark Stoops, my God. It's year 3. We know the rule. Every 3 years, it's just like clockwork. Here comes 10 wins. It's year 3. Doesn't happen.
Guys, let's go to Athens, Georgia, the Georgia Bulldogs. And I'm going to try to resist talking about maybe the top storyline being can Georgia make it to the start of fall camp without somebody else getting in trouble. But, anyways, when it comes to Georgia, you talk about it. We talked about Ole Miss, another team that I look at them. I don't see a lot of flaws, guys. I really don't. I think when it comes to Georgia, for me, the top storyline is, and Kirby Smart talked about this at SEC Media Days. I thought this was really interesting that he mentioned that they don't use negative outcomes as motivation. Not making the playoff last year, not winning a 3rd straight national championship. Georgia was that team last year early on in the season. They couldn't win by enough. They couldn't look good enough because all season they're being judged against, not are you the best team in the SEC? Are you good enough to win 3 straight national championships? And despite what Kirby Smart has said, I'm excited to hear about, watch, see it. A pissed off Kirby Smart, a pissed off Georgia. They're excited to get back on the field, put all this offseason nonsense beside them. And I know it. Listen, take ownership. A lot of it's their fault. Their guys are doing it. But lock back in, make it all about football. I can't wait to hear from and talk about and listen to and watch a pissed off Kirby Smart and a pissed off Georgia team. And I think just operating with the chip on that shoulder, that's the storyline I'm most excited to hear about out of Athens.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball, Kirby's baby. I'm going to go the interior defensive line as well. Obviously, it's not to the LSU level. But, again, it was dropped off. They were compared to their own standard there. You go back and watch the SEC championship game against Alabama. Alabama, interior-wise, did what they wanted to do. It's probably Alabama's best game on the offensive line. It's probably Georgia's worst. They were down some guys. But it wasn't to the Georgia standard. Now, some of that is scheme-wise. Glenn Schumann's changed up a little bit. The mint tight front. They're willing to give up some yards to limit explosive plays where Dan Lanning and Mel Tucker, the previous Georgia defensive coordinators, were not willing to do that. But in championship games, you got to be able to run the ball against teams that are similar, or you got to be able to stop the run. Michael Williams, Nazir Stackhouse, Warren Brenton, even throw Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. Guys like that have to be able to win their one-on-one matchups. They couldn't in big games last year, and it cost them a three-peat. I mean, you can make the case they were probably the best team in college football from top to bottom. I know they didn't make it, but again, it was because the Alabama deep offensive line won their battle against Georgia in that early December game last year in Atlanta. I want to see Georgia take that next step. I think they're going to change that scheme up a little bit because I think it made Kirby uncomfortable. Like how many yards they were giving up on the interior last year. So I expect them to change that a little bit. But let's see that improve. That's what I want to see improve. I think it's the big storyline. How do they change that for Georgia?
Neither one of you did it. You didn't take the low-hanging fruit. I get to take the low-hanging fruit. How the hell do you make sure that the off-the-field incidents don't carry into the regular season? And I mean the aura around you. This is the storyline. It is. You don't like it. I don't care. You've made the mess. Now you got to lie in the death hole. Now you got to lay in your grave, and you have to let the dirt be piled on you until you're able to rise from the ashes like Frankenstein and just take over the world like we saw in Transylvania. That's it. Because if at the end of the day, the problem isn't even just Kirby hasn't tried. Kirby's tried. We all know this. We've all spoken to people internally with the program. We've all spoken to people internally who cover the team. They've done their resources to make sure that speeding allegations are becoming no longer a thing. The Ra Thomas situation is completely different than anything else out there. So don't try to compare the two, but it still has a question when it comes to the culture. Again, whether or not Kirby is responsible, because he is, it's not as if he hasn't tried. But you want to know what the best part is about a team like Georgia? They have the talent. Everyone knows they have the talent. They know they have the running back. They know they have the wide receiver room. They have the defense. They bring in young players who immediately have flourished from the get-go. KJ Bolden this year may eventually be a starter like Malachi Stark and not let go of the job. But you know what the best part about a program like Georgia is? They should be player-led. They should be a team that is able to not even worry about the babysitters that are their coaches and say enough is enough. We have to hold our own end of the bargain because it's no longer our coaches. We have to hold other players accountable for curfew. We have to hold other players accountable for showing up to workouts. We have to hold players accountable for not being willing to go out late at night. And also, when you are a player-led team, those are the teams that come out on top. The team that won the damn national championship last year didn't have its head coach for 6 games, and they dismantled everybody, including running it down the throat of Penn State in the entire second half where J.J. McCarthy didn't have to throw the football. When you're that good of a team, you are supposed to be player-led. And so how do you make sure that nobody on the outside is in charge of the internal mistakes that you continue to make? How do you make sure that internally you are one mind, one sound, one body preparing to go to Atlanta to play against Clemson to where everybody by the time that you get to kickoff, they're not talking about what has happened in the summer. They're talking about what's going to happen in the fall.
Preach, Cole. Preach. Attaboy. Mic freaking drop. I love that. All right, let's move to Gainesville, Florida. The Florida Gators. Big year for Billy Napier, guys. Big year for Billy Napier. College football's toughest schedule. It goes without saying. My top storyline, though, on the offensive side, that's where I'm going to go. Do you guys know, by the way, I dropped quarterback rankings, power rankings last preseason. Graham Mertz was 14th out of 14. So the team I'm going to talk about in a couple teams from now, that may bode well for your starting quarterback because I've got him 16th. But on the offensive side, it's not Graham Mertz. That's not where my question marks lie. Top storyline for me, guys, is you lose Ricky Pearsall. Who's going to be his top target? How about Eugene Wilson, right? Continuing to hear about Eugene Wilson on the outside. I think this is a dude that probably not getting talked about enough, honestly. They were excited about him down there in Gainesville, but you're not hearing about him in regards to top playmakers in the SEC. I don't know if it's because, again, of what Florida's got on their schedule. Maybe people aren't that high on Florida, but I'm excited to hear more about the growth of Eugene Wilson into that role, being that top playmaker down there in the swamp for Graham Mertz and that offense.
Yeah, just to piggyback off you, I think it's going to be the offensive line. I think I like the offense. Maybe you could make a case, find another running back outside Montrell Johnson would be another one. But you're right. I like Graham Mertz. If that offensive line can take the next step, if Rob Sell, the offensive line coach, who essentially is Billy Napier's right-hand guy, they grew up as analysts for a minute when they were at Alabama. Billy brought him to Louisiana to be the co-OC offensive line coach. Rob Sell's been there forever when people have been calling for his head. I actually think the offensive line is going to be good. I think the move for Damian George from tackle to inside to an interior guard spot is going to help them. Austin Barber and then San Diego State transfer Brandon Crenshaw Dixon are going to be fine at the tackle spots. I mean, overall, probably their best guy last year was Jake Slaughter from top to bottom. But I just think that simple move for Damian George moving inside, his natural position. Cole's guy, North Shore kid from Houston, was at Alabama. I think that's going to be the thing that kind of puts him over the edge. I like Florida's offense. Just find some more weapons outside of Montrell Johnson and Trey Wilson. I think the offensive line is going to be the best unit they've had at Florida. I just think that one simple chess move, moving him inside, finding another tackle in Crenshaw Dixon from San Diego State is the difference.
Well, how dare you, Christopher, for not putting more respect on Mashed Potato Graham Mertz's name, because he is a god, and I love that man. Also, just spoiler alert, Eugene Wilson, Trey Wilson also is on our latest episode that's going to be coming out of the underrated players that aren't being talked about enough. So Chris already kind of hit on that because Trey Wilson 100% belongs in that list. Let's go defense. Let's talk about the addition of Ron Roberts. They go move off of Coach Chaos. They still have Austin Armstrong, who many people in the industry have loved. They love his idealism. They love that he comes from a background of both Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. They love that he is able to be one of those rising stars. But you need to have a very good veteran in that locker room. I think that there's going to be a little bit more directness to this defensive front. I think the other thing that's really important here is having a bit more of that coaching standard. Prince Manley Ellen came out and said in Oxford that the thing that he didn't like was there wasn't enough discipline for him being as a coach. They said, just go in the backfield and make plays. Well, I think that when you bring in a guy like Ron Roberts that's been around the block and has seen the ability of what is good defensive play, that's going to be an area where there are going to be a bit more direct. So I'm excited to see who steps up on this defense. They let go of a lot of transfers. They brought in some names, very under the radar names that still are going to have to find their stride. But if they do, I mean, again, I'm not saying that you can go ahead and define this team the way that everyone else is going to. But if they're losing games by one possession and they're finding a way to stay involved, and largely it's through the defense, you've seen progress. Because, again, last season, I thought that as good as the offense was, the defense continuously shot themselves in the foot, especially down the stretch. Can you get that standard set early on in August to when early November rolls around, you still are in games?
And also, too, during fall camp, can we get rid of the self-inflicted wounds, Billy Napier? No two jerseys, same number. Let's not do that this year.
Yeah, I'll be interested. That relationship, Ron Roberts, Austin Armstrong, will be interested in how they get along. You're right, that will.
Yeah. Coaching. Nobody makes up more. This is kind of a side note. Nobody makes up more fake coaching staff roles and positions than Billy Napier. I mean, it's the director of defensive morale staff thing. I don't even know. I don't know what they're called. Either way, can they put it together? We'll see. All right, let's go to Auburn, Alabama. The Auburn Tigers. I just mentioned quarterback power rankings, and guys, that's where my top storyline lies, the low-hanging fruit. Come on down, Peyton Thorne. You are 16 out of 16 in my power rankings. Do I have a reason to feel differently going into the year? I know Hugh Freeze has taken over the play calling, and I think that's a great move. Out of respect for what Diego Pavia did last year, I put Pavia one spot ahead of him because I'm like, these gentlemen went head-to-head, and one guy beat the other guy, and it wasn't Peyton Thorne beating Pavia. You were dead last in the conference last year, guys, in passing yards per game. If you tell me right now Peyton Thorne finishes top 10 in the league in passing. I think Auburn goes 9-3. The rest of the team's fine. They've got weapons. Nobody upgraded the skill position players more than Auburn. I think in the SEC you could argue. But are we hearing positive things about Peyton Thorne in regards to his progression, taking the next step? This year was a different dynamic. He got a full spring ball, a full summer, if you will. It all comes down to the quarterback position for me, guys.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, can Hugh Freeze just kind of stay in his lane and do what he does best? Well, last year when he decided he wasn't going to call plays, that's when you knew Auburn was going to underachieve a little bit last year. It's like you were one of the better play callers within your system when you can get it going. He does a phenomenal job deciphering defenses, finding holes in defenses. Look what he did with Chad Kelly and Bo Wallace. Like, he is a great off-the-play caller. I think he tried to come in there across the state. Probably thought he'd compete against the guy longer than he did, but Nick Saban wanted to be kind of that CEO. I manage the roster kind of like Sark does, like Mike Elko's trying to do it. I see the numbers, salary cap guys. So he brought in Will Redmond, a GM, to do that. I think he learned a lot about himself. Can Hugh just stay on the offensive side of the ball? Last year, a lot of people don't know this. This may be some breaking news. Cole just brought up our guy. Poor Ron Roberts all season took the blame for the old gravedigger play. Well, Ron Roberts wanted to rush 4 in that situation. Hugh Freeze overruled him and rushed 2. So people want to blame Rob Roberts for that. That's on Hugh Freeze. Stay in your lane. Almost take a page out of Gus Malzahn's book at Auburn. Be the offensive coordinator, dude, because you're really good at it. I want to see what that relationship between him and what you said, Chris, Peyton Thorne. Let's see them take that next step. So if Hugh Freeze can just, I'm an offensive guy. I do what I do. This is my shot in the corner from a basketball reference. I don't go shoot 5 feet from beyond the 3 from the wing. Let me go stay in my corner. Do that. Let your people go do their jobs too that you've hired.
You have 5 home games in a row to start the year. You also have a ton of freshmen who are going to see meaningful reps this year, including arguably the number 1 wide receiver in the country that nobody is talking about because Jeremiah Smith exists and Cam Coleman, not to mention Perry Thompson, not to mention Jay Crawford on the defensive side, not to mention DeAndre Carter on the offensive line, not to mention Joe Phillips at linebacker. There are a ton of dudes who might end up starting extensive reps for Auburn this year to where the youth movement is in full effect, to where, yes, maybe they're going to be 8-4, maybe they're 9-3 at best, but you're building for 2025. This is the year where you throw all the chips in the pile and say, come at us, bro. We're ready. And so how quickly can you get these guys on the same page? Some who have not been there from the start of fall camp. Some who will be there for the first time since the start of fall camp. Some who have been there since really spring. Can they build off of a successful spring? All that aside, how quickly can you get these freshmen to be up to pace to where they're not acting like freshmen? Because again, you got 5 games at home before you go on the road for a month. Those 5 games are quintessential to what your overall record would be because of several of them are very winnable. And then, of course, you have the big one, in my opinion, against Oklahoma, which could be the litmus test.
Can you guys believe somebody out there thinks Arkansas is going to go to Auburn and beat the Tigers? Oh, that was me, by the way.
Yeah, that was you, buddy.
Christopher Hughes says, woo pig. On that note, let's embrace the hog, as Sam Pittman would say, guys. Let's talk Arkansas Razorbacks. Top
Crack open a cold beer.
Let's go grab a cold beer. Why not?
Dang it, I forgot mine.
Sam Pittman will be proud. Yeah, let's talk Arkansas. Top storyline for them. You mentioned Sam Pittman. You mentioned the boss hog. There's a lot of different directions you can go with Arkansas because we got lots of question marks. Sam Pittman's on the hot seat. This might be his last fall camp. For me, it's the offensive line, guys. They were abysmal last year. And I think one of the biggest things when you're a coach on the hot seat, you can't be bad at the thing that's supposed to be your bread and butter.
Yeah.
And when you're Sam Pittman, that's the offensive line, right? If you're scoring a bunch of points, if you're running the football well, and the defense is leaky, people aren't going to be happy, but hey, just go get a new DC. But when you're the head coach and you're an offensive line guy and the offensive line's not good and you're losing, they ain't going to go get a new O-line coach. They're going to say, go get a new you, which is the head coach. So the offensive line's got to be better. Fernando Carmona, obviously the big addition they got over the offseason. They got to take the step forward to have any sort of chance for Bobby Petrino, who I'm high on. Taylor Green made some big-time throws in the spring game. Granted, spring game, but he showed the ability. But it will mean nothing if the offensive line does not come together.
Yeah, I think the storyline's going to be Bobby Petrino developing Taylor Green for Boise State. I just think that's going to be – I trust that. I trust the offensive line with Eric Mateos getting fixed. You mentioned the offensive line. I think it's probably pretty tough for Sam Pittman to pack his essential sons, Cody Kennedy's bags, and send him to Cole's favorite place on earth, Starkville, Mississippi. But I trust the offense. Like I don't think they have like a true dominant guy on the outside. I think Luke Haas is going to have a big year. It could be a second or third primary threat for him. But I'm going to go with the quarterback spot because if Taylor Green's not, they really got no one after him. Malachi Singleton doesn't really fit what Bobby Petrino wants to do. I think this is his third year in the program, kid from Atlanta. But let's just call it what it is. If I told y'all Taylor Green just did not live up to what people thought he could be or what you would expect him to be if Arkansas goes and wins 6, 7, 8 games, I think it wouldn't matter what the defense is. Again, I think the defense in November, I mean, they could be playing the top 3 offenses in the league, arguably Missouri, Texas, and Ole Miss. So, and typically Travis Williams' defenses kind of fade in November, going back to UCF. But I think all bets are off. It won't matter if the quarterback position isn't improved. I actually think it will. I think Taylor Green's going to do a good job. I actually feel pretty good about Arkansas's quarterback position, offense in general.
And Taylor Green, by the way, side note, handpicked by Bobby Petrino.
Yeah, they've been letting us know that, huh?
They have been letting us know that.
Do you have any life? I mean, honestly, here's the thing. I am probably the lowest person in this room on Arkansas. I don't see a trajectory for this team.
Embrace the hog, Cole.
You embrace the hog. I burn them at the stake. That's what I do. I'm getting ready to slow roast it and have a pig barbecue. Have my pulled pork sandwiches all good because that's how I feel about the squad. Do you have any life? Because if we all know what the writing is on the wall right now, we all know what people are saying about Arkansas. This has to be a year where Sam Pittman puts it all together. You know, you hear people talk about where last season they thought it was going to be the writing on the wall. But then, of course, Hunter Yurachek decided to keep on hold of him for one more year because of he's a nice guy, because people love him, because of he's the fun cook in the kitchen that you don't really care if the food's a little bit overserved because he's got great war stories. He's willing to crack open a beer with the kids in town, and he's all excited about that. Like that's where he is. So I don't know. Do you have life? And also, is there kind of an internal decision made that Sam knows that this is probably his gung-ho swan song year? So do players play for Sam knowing that? Like, what is the tempo that you set for yourself going into this year? Because ultimately that might determine if you are going to go 4-8, 5-7, 6-6, or 7-5.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if players are watching Polar Express at halftime again.
Shoot, Arkansas's got the crazy, but their first 5 games are all in different stadiums.
Yeah, that is true.
They open up in Little Rock.
And Cole, as Sam Pittman would say, embrace the hog and go drink a cold beer. That sounds like you need one, honestly.
I probably do.
All right, guys. Last and certainly not least, the Alabama Crimson Tide. And times they are a-changing. They have changed in Tuscaloosa. Guys, that's where my top storyline is. I mean, I know there's many different things. I know you guys will probably dive into on the field specifically. But just – this is all still so new. I understand Kalen DeBoer. He was hired back in early January, but this still feels, it's like seeing your mom kiss another man. It feels wrong, you know, like it just, I don't know how else to explain it. So what is fall camp like? What is the vibe? You know, spring ball was kind of weird. We got Roll Tide Willie
out there calling defense.
We got music at practice. Like, you know, this is going to be as different a fall camp as any we've had in over 15 years in Tuscaloosa.
2007. Yeah.
Does different equate to still elite? Is different still elite in Tuscaloosa? That is my question.
I feel like there's a ton of storylines here. You hit one hammer on the head right there, Chris. I'll go with on the field. The Kane Womack defense, 4-2-5 defense, says he's been meeting with Saban a lot. They got a bunch of different positions. Wolf, Husky. We'll see. The secondary's got a lot of more questions.
Dave, just blitz, Bama, blitz. That's it. Blitz, Bama, blitz.
That's what Willie would do. But no, I mean, I'm just interested to see the defense. It could be for the first time in a long time where Bama fans are worried about having to go outscore people on a regular basis. I really don't think it's going to be like that. But I think the goal for Bama's defense first year under Kalen DeBoer should be a top 20 defense. And for Alabama fans, they're not accustomed to that. Outside of the top 10 would be blasphemy, but you're not even recognizing that. But I think that's kind of the case this year. So that would be my top storyline going into the field from a standpoint of on-the-field production. But you're 100% right. Just not seeing the straw hat, not seeing it with the secondary position group will be something that we have not seen since 2006 when Mike Shula was roaming the sidelines.
All right, let me set the scene. It's early morning. You get the fresh dew right on the grass of Tuscaloosa. You see Jalen Milroe back in shotgun formation. He's about ready to unload it. He jukes. He dives. He makes a defender miss. He sees a wide open wide receiver down the field. Beautiful spiral, 60 yards. You see Uncle Rico. He moving to the sideline because Jalen Milroe is here to take that country mile and throw it over that mountaintop. And on the other side is Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams is the guy that everyone needs to be paying attention to because you got to remember at one point, there was a moment where he was not committed to Alabama and then Kalen DeBoer did the whole thing, throw the house, just like we see in EA College Football 25, throw the house and get that recruit. And he made sure that there was a reason to believe that if I'm a 5-star plus talent, I can be a 5-star phenom in Tuscaloosa, just like Julio, just like Jerry Jeudy, just like Devonta, just like every other wide receiver that walked into this building and eventually went on a Thursday night in the NFL draft. And he's the guy that is going to set the tone because you got to remember, I don't know this offense. I was believing in Saban. I was believing in the future of T-Town with the GOAT, but your offense is good enough for me. If he hits, because he didn't get the spring, so we have no idea what he is going to be. If he hits, every wide receiver just immediately said, if Alabama offers me, how the hell am I going to say no? Because if it was good enough for Ryan Williams, look at what he's doing in year one. He is the reincarnation of Amari Cooper from 2012, immediately becoming an All-American phenom. I can be that same guy, and I want to be better than that guy. I want to be able to put up similar numbers to him. If he can set the tone early on, be that go-to weapon for Jalen Milroe, opposite Jeremy Bernard, whoever is the tight end, honestly, how are you not salivating at the mouth? We're going to see Alabama have its trials and tribulations, but at the end of the day, if number 2 is the number 1 wide receiver, you got a big-time problem coming to Tuscaloosa in the not-so-distant future. Everybody is going to be watching and paying attention to exactly what this offense can be.
Our friend Dogscast, by the way, appreciate him tuning in, does great work. Says, my biggest question is about Ryan Williams. Bama fan thinks he's going to be a huge deal this year. He'll be great, but I don't know if it's this year. So, Cole, to your point, not the only one. Ryan Williams, a big storyline there in Tuscaloosa. Guys, we knocked out all 16 teams. Fall camp getting going for each and every single SEC program this week as kickoff. Finally, toe meets leather. It is just around the corner, and we cannot freaking wait. Everybody who tuned in, commented, thank you all so much. To those asking, we will be doing more of these types of live shows, and we'll actually have some that are Q&A specific where we'll get to every single question, maybe even calls. You never know. Stick around, especially as we get to in season. Guys, it's going to be a lot of fun. Fellas, thank you all for taking the time. Appreciate it. This is a lot of fun.
It's a blast. Appreciate you. This is fun.
We're so close. It's
so
right
close.
there. We're so
close.
close.
Guys, again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those as well. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. Stay up to date with us. All the latest content bleeding out of the eyeballs. Again, we sit 1 month from kickoff. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. And we'll catch you on the other side.